The biting wind swept through Snowfield, reminding Elijah of the winter past when he saved a small sparrow lost outside his pottery workshop. Its cheerful chirping had warmed his silent days. But tonight, as the snowstorm raged, a faint whimper outside his door carried a weight far greater. What would you do if a lost soul knocked on your door during a snowstorm? Elijah didn't expect the answer to reveal itself that frigid night when he opened the door to a pair of pleading amber eyes, trembling in the cold. Snowfield, a small mountain town known for its harsh winters, was shrouded in white as the season's fiercest blizzard descended without warning. The streets, usually quiet this time of night, were now deserted, with only the howling wind filling the void. Snow piled against doorsteps and frosted the windows of the modest homes that dotted the neighborhood. Elijah Carter sat in his cozy single-story house near the edge of town. His home was unremarkable but warm, a place filled with the practical comforts he needed and the creative chaos of his passion for pottery. Clay dust coated the shelves and tools lay scattered across the table in his garage-turned-studio. At 45, Elijah was a man of routine. Mornings started with strong coffee and a walk through the neighborhood, afternoons were for shaping clay on his pottery wheel, and evenings were spent either firing his latest creations or lost in a book. He was content with his solitude, having traded the noise and demands of city life for the calm predictability of Snowfield. Tonight, however, predictability was nowhere to be found. The blizzard had turned the streets into an icy wasteland. Elijah had just finished fixing the vent on his kiln in the garage when he heard it, a faint, muffled sound that cut through the storm's roar. He paused, straining to hear again over the wind. There it was, a weak, plaintive whimper. Frowning, Elijah grabbed his heavy coat and boots. The cold struck him like a hammer as he stepped outside, the wind biting through his layers. Snow whipped around him in chaotic swirls, limiting visibility to just a few feet. He followed the sound, his breath visible in the frigid air. At the end of his driveway, near the hedges that bordered his small front yard, he saw it. A dog. The golden retriever was trembling, its golden fur matted with snow and ice. Its amber eyes, filled with a mixture of exhaustion and desperation, locked onto him. The dog's body quaked as it tried to stand but faltered, collapsing onto the snow. "Oh, you poor thing," Elijah murmured, kneeling beside the dog. He reached out cautiously, letting it sniff his hand. The dog didn't shy away. It was too weak to resist. "You're freezing," he said softly, pulling off his scarf and wrapping it around the dog's body. As he lifted it into his arms, he noticed something else, the dog's rounded belly. It was pregnant. "Let's get you inside," Elijah said, his voice gentle. The dog's head rested against his chest as he carried it toward the house, shielding it as best he could from the cutting wind. Once inside, the warmth of the living room enveloped them both. Elijah placed the dog on a soft throw blanket near the fireplace and quickly stoked the flames to build up the heat. He fetched another blanket to drape over her and a bowl of lukewarm water. The dog lapped at the water eagerly, her eyes never leaving him. "You're safe now," Elijah assured her. He crouched down to inspect her more closely. Her golden coat was beautiful, though it showed signs of neglect, matted fur, a few scratches, and the telltale signs of a long journey in harsh conditions. "Where did you come from?" he wondered aloud. The dog didn't have a collar or tag, nothing to indicate she belonged to anyone. Still, Elijah was certain she wasn't a stray. Her gentle nature and the way she trusted him suggested otherwise. As the hours passed, the dog began to relax. Her trembling subsided as the fire's warmth seeped into her body. Elijah sat nearby, observing her with quiet curiosity. He decided to name her Neska, a name that to him carried strength and gentleness, much like the dog herself. It wasn't long before Neska shifted uncomfortably, letting out a low whine. Elijah's heart sank as he realized what was happening. She was going into labor. "All right, girl, I've got you," he said, springing into action. He brought more blankets and rearranged the space near the fire to make it as comfortable as possible. Though he was far from an expert, he stayed by her side, offering soft words of encouragement as she labored. By dawn, 5 tiny puppies lay nestled against Nesca's side. Their small bodies, no larger than Elijah's hand, moved instinctively toward her warmth. Nesca, though exhausted, diligently cleaned each one and nudged them close to nurse. Elijah watched the scene with a mixture of awe and tenderness. He had never expected his quiet life to intersect with such a miraculous event. Nesca had brought new life into his home, and though he didn't yet know her story, he felt an unspoken connection to her and her little family. As the storm outside began to subside, Elijah leaned back against the couch, the warmth of the fire and the soft sounds of the puppies filling the room. For the first time in years, his house didn't feel empty. Unbeknownst to him, this was just the beginning of a journey that would challenge his solitude, open his heart, and bring a profound change to his quiet life in Snowfield. The storm outside raged on, its icy grip tightening around the town of Snowfield. But inside Elijah's home, the atmosphere was different. Warmth radiated from the fireplace, casting a soft golden glow across the room. Nesca, the golden retriever, lay on the thick blanket Elijah had arranged for her, her breath shallow but steady. Elijah sat nearby, keeping a watchful eye on her. He wasn't an expert in caring for animals, let alone a pregnant dog. But instinct and empathy guided his actions. Nesca's occasional whines and restless movements told him that the moment was near. As the evening stretched into night, Nesca's labor began. Elijah quickly gathered more blankets, making a comfortable space near the fire. He spoke to her in soft tones, his voice calm despite the uncertainty he felt. "It's okay, girl, you're safe here," he said, crouching beside her. Nesca's eyes met his, and for a moment it felt as though she understood. With a quiet whimper, she shifted, her body preparing for what was to come. The hours passed slowly, each moment etched with anticipation. Elijah stayed by her side, his hands ready to help if needed. His heart ached for her as she labored, but Nesca proved resilient. With each passing moment, she seemed to draw strength from the warmth of the fire and the gentle presence of the man beside her. Finally, the first puppy arrived, a tiny bundle of fur, wet and trembling. Nesca immediately turned her attention to it, instinctively cleaning it and nudging it close to her side. Elijah watched in awe as life unfolded before him, feeling a profound sense of wonder. One by one, 4 more puppies followed. Each was greeted by Nesca's tender care, their small bodies snuggling against her for warmth. Elijah ensured the fire burned brightly, its heat enveloping the little family in a cocoon of comfort. By the time the last puppy arrived, Elijah felt an overwhelming sense of gratitude. He had never imagined his quiet home would be the setting for such a miracle. Nesca, despite her exhaustion, radiated a quiet strength as she lay surrounded by her newborns. "Good job, Nesca," Elijah murmured, his voice thick with emotion. He reached out tentatively, gently stroking her head. She let out a soft sigh, her amber eyes closing as if to say, "Thank you." The puppies were tiny, their fur damp but already showing the soft golden hues they would grow into. Their small squeaks and movements filled the room, breaking the usual stillness of Elijah's home. He couldn't help but smile, his heart swelling with a warmth he hadn't felt in years. As the night wore on, Elijah took a moment to sit back and observe the scene before him. Nesca lay curled protectively around her puppies, her body a shield of warmth and love. The firelight danced across their fur, creating a picture of pure serenity. Yet amidst the joy of the moment, questions began to surface in Elijah's mind. Where had Nesca come from? She wasn't a stray. Her behavior and the way she cared for her puppies showed she had known a home before. Was she lost? Abandoned? His gaze drifted to her rounded belly and the matted fur on her sides. How far had she traveled to find shelter here? And why had she chosen his home? Elijah shook his head, pushing the questions aside for the time being. What mattered now was that she was safe, and so were her puppies. He could deal with the rest later. As the first light of dawn began to peek through the snow-covered windows, Elijah felt a sense of peace settle over him. The storm outside had begun to subside, but inside his home a different kind of calm reigned. The calm of new life, of purpose rediscovered. For the first time in years, Elijah's home was filled with life, and in his heart he knew that things would never quite be the same again. The blizzard lingered over Snowfield, blanketing the small town in an unrelenting sea of white. Streets remained silent, the world outside Elijah's home frozen in time. Inside, however, his once quiet house had transformed into a lively sanctuary. Neska, now settled into her role as a mother, devoted herself to caring for her 5 puppies. Each tiny creature radiated energy and innocence, filling the room with playful squeaks and the occasional tumble as they wriggled against each other. Elijah had taken to sitting by the fire, watching the scene with a smile that seemed to have found a permanent place on his face. It wasn't long before Elijah decided the puppies needed names. Their distinct personalities quickly revealed themselves, making the task easier than he had anticipated. Blaze, the boldest of the bunch, always seemed to be the first to explore. His curious nature and boundless energy earned him a name that spoke to his fiery spirit. Snowy, with her soft cream-colored fur, exuded a calm and gentle demeanor. She often curled up beside Neska, content to observe the chaos her siblings created. Comet, true to his name, darted around with a speed and agility that left the others scrambling to keep up. Misty, the quiet and observant one, often sat by herself, her soft, wavy fur giving her an air of tranquility. Buddy, the most social of them all, had an undeniable charm. Always seeking affection, he was quick to snuggle up to Elijah whenever he had the chance. "Quite the little family we have here, huh, Neska?" Elijah said one evening as he scratched behind her ears. She let out a soft huff, her amber eyes glancing up at him with what he could only describe as gratitude. The days passed in a warm blur of activity. Elijah found himself adjusting to the needs of his new companions. He prepared simple meals for Neska, ensured the fire never went out, and even created a small play area for the puppies using pillows and blankets. The once still house now echoed with the pitter-patter of tiny paws and the occasional yip of excitement. Yet amidst the joy, Elijah couldn't shake the questions lingering in the back of his mind. Where had Neska come from? She wasn't a stray, that much was clear. Her gentle demeanor and the way she cared for her puppies spoke of a dog who had known love and a home. The answer came one snowy afternoon when Elijah decided to tidy up the corner near the door where Neska had first collapsed. Among the snow-soaked towel and other discarded items, he found a small, tattered scarf. Its fabric, though damp and frayed, carried the faint scent of campfire smoke and pine needles. Elijah turned the scarf over in his hands, noting a distinct logo embroidered in the corner: Cascade Outdoor Adventures. It was a popular camping company that organized trips in the mountains surrounding Snowfield. "A camping trip," Elijah murmured, piecing together the clues. Neska must have been with a family who had ventured into the mountains. Perhaps she had become separated during a sudden storm or wandered off in search of something. Whatever had happened, it was clear she hadn't always been alone. The realization added weight to his heart. Somewhere someone might be missing her, or worse, might have given up on finding her. Elijah glanced over at Neska, who was napping beside her puppies, her body curled protectively around them. "I'll find out where you came from," he promised softly, tucking the scarf into a drawer for safekeeping. For now, though, his focus remained on the small family in his care. Neska and her puppies had brought light into his life during the coldest, loneliest days of the year. Elijah had always been content with his solitude, but now, with the warmth and life filling his home, he realized how much he had been missing. As the storm outside showed no sign of letting up, Elijah felt a quiet determination growing within him. He would do whatever it took to ensure Neska and her puppies were safe, cared for, and, if possible, reunited with the family who had lost them. Little did he know this journey was just beginning. The blizzard had finally passed, leaving Snowfield wrapped in a pristine blanket of snow. The skies cleared and sunlight filtered through the frosted windows of Elijah's home. Inside, the atmosphere was anything but still. Neska's puppies had grown livelier with each passing day, their tiny paws skittering across the floor as they tumbled and played. Elijah had never thought his house could feel so full of life. The once quiet living room now resonated with the sounds of playful yips and the soft rustle of blankets. Even Neska seemed more at ease, her watchful eyes softening as she observed her puppies exploring their little world. One morning, as Elijah sat on the floor playing with Buddy, he glanced at the camera on his desk. It had been weeks since he last used it. His days of documenting his pottery felt distant amidst the whirlwind of caring for Nesca and her puppies. Why not, he mused, picking up the camera. Over the next hour, Elijah captured moments of Nesca and her puppies. He took shots of Blaze darting after a toy, Snowy nestled near the fire, and Comet mid-leap. Misty's calm demeanor translated beautifully in a quiet portrait, while Buddy's mischievous grin brought a smile to Elijah's face. Finally, he focused on Nesca. The golden light streaming through the windows illuminated her coat, bringing out its soft hues. As Elijah adjusted the lens, something caught his eye, a faint marking on the inside of her right ear. He zoomed in for a closer look, and it was subtle, almost imperceptible, but there it was, a small, star-shaped discoloration in her fur. Elijah frowned, intrigued. "That's unique," he murmured. He had spent enough time with Nesca to notice her distinct features, but this was the first time he had paid attention to such a detail. Later that day, as he scrolled through the photos on his laptop, Elijah paused on the close-up of Nesca's ear. The marking was unmistakable. A thought crossed his mind. What if someone was looking for her? Spurred by this realization, Elijah decided to post the photos online. He uploaded them to a few local groups, including a community page and a group for lost pets. Alongside the photos, he wrote, "Found golden retriever with a distinctive star-shaped marking on her ear, found during the recent blizzard near Snowfield, currently safe and caring for her puppies. Please contact me if you recognize her." Elijah didn't expect much. People often overlooked posts like this, and it had been weeks since Nesca had arrived. Still, the possibility of reuniting her with her family lingered in his mind. Hours turned into a day, and Elijah nearly forgot about the post amidst the daily chaos of caring for the puppies. But the next morning, as he checked his messages over coffee, a notification caught his attention. It was a reply to his post linking to another post in a group he hadn't seen before, Lost Pets of Cascade County. Clicking the link, Elijah's heart skipped a beat. The post, dated 2 weeks prior, featured a family photo of a golden retriever sitting happily between two young children. The dog in the photo was unmistakably Nesca, though the caption revealed her true name, Bella. Missing Bella. Last seen at Cascade Trails Campground, she has a distinctive star-shaped marking inside her right ear. Please help us bring her home. The message tugged at Elijah's heart. He scrolled further and found heartfelt comments from friends and strangers offering sympathy and support. The family's desperation was palpable, even through the screen. Elijah took a deep breath and sent a private message to the account that had posted the photo. He included a recent picture of Nesca, Bella, along with a brief explanation of how he had found her and her puppies during the storm. Within minutes, his phone buzzed with a reply. "This is incredible. That's Bella, our Bella. We thought we'd lost her forever. Thank you so much for reaching out. Please, can we call you?" Elijah's hands trembled slightly as he typed back his number. Moments later, his phone rang, and a woman's voice, tinged with both relief and disbelief, came through. "Is this Elijah?" "Yes," he replied, his voice calm despite the whirlwind of emotions. "And you must be Bella's family?" "Yes, I'm Karen. My husband Tom and our kids have been searching for her ever since the storm hit during our camping trip. She must have gotten scared and wandered off. We've been checking every shelter and posting online, but—" Her voice broke, overcome with emotion. "She's here," Elijah said gently. "She's safe. And she's been busy. She has 5 puppies now." Karen gasped, and Elijah could hear the sound of excited chatter in the background. "Puppies? Oh, Bella." Elijah smiled. "She's been an incredible mother. They're all healthy and thriving." "We can't thank you enough for taking care of her," Karen said. "When can we come see her?" Elijah glanced over at Nesca, Bella, and her puppies who were curled up together near the fire. "Let's wait until the road's clear a bit more. I want to make sure it's safe for you to travel." "Of course," Karen said, her gratitude evident. "We'll be ready whenever you are." As the call ended, Elijah leaned back in his chair, his gaze returning to Bella and her puppies. For weeks he had wondered about her story, and now the pieces were falling into place. Bella wasn't just a stray who had found her way to his doorstep. She was a beloved family member, lost and searching for safety. The thought of saying goodbye to Bella and her puppies stirred a mix of emotions in Elijah's heart. They had become a part of his world, bringing warmth and joy to his once quiet life. Still, he knew what he had to do. For now, though, there was time to prepare for the reunion, to ensure Bella and her puppies were ready to return home, and perhaps, just perhaps, time for Elijah to figure out what their presence had meant to him. The snow was beginning to melt, revealing patches of frost-covered grass as the sun cast its tentative warmth over Snowfield. Inside Elijah's home, preparations were underway for Bella's reunion with her family. He had tidied the living room, arranged the puppies' space, and even drafted a checklist to ensure their journey back home would be as smooth as possible. Yet amidst the flurry of preparation, Elijah found himself pausing more often than not to observe the little family that had brought so much joy into his home. Bella, ever the attentive mother, seemed to sense the changes ahead. Her amber eyes held a quiet understanding, and though she remained gentle with her puppies, she allowed them more independence, as if preparing them for the transition to come. Among the 5 puppies, one had become particularly attached to Elijah. Buddy, with his playful nature and boundless affection, seemed to follow Elijah wherever he went. Whether it was curling up at Elijah's feet while he read or bouncing excitedly at his side when he carried firewood, Buddy's presence had become a constant source of comfort. Elijah couldn't help but smile at the little pup's antics. Buddy had a way of brightening the room, his wagging tail and cheerful barks filling the air with a lightness Elijah hadn't realized he needed. One afternoon, as Elijah sat near the fire with a cup of coffee, Buddy climbed into his lap, his tiny paws pressing against Elijah's chest. The pup looked up at him with wide, curious eyes, his tail thumping softly against the blanket. "You're quite the charmer, aren't you?" Elijah said, scratching behind Buddy's ears. Buddy let out a happy yip, settling comfortably in Elijah's lap. Bella, lying nearby, lifted her head to watch the interaction. Her gaze was calm, almost approving, as if she too recognized the bond that had formed between the man and her pup. That night, as Elijah lay in bed, he found himself wrestling with a decision. Bella and her puppies belonged together, and soon they would be returning to the family who had searched so desperately for them. But the thought of saying goodbye to Buddy left an ache in his chest. For weeks, Buddy had been his shadow, bringing life and laughter to his home. Elijah knew that Bella's family would provide a loving home for all the puppies, but a part of him couldn't ignore the connection he had formed with the little dog. The next morning, as he prepared breakfast, Elijah noticed Bella watching him closely. She wasn't the type to hover, but today her gaze felt purposeful. Buddy, as usual, trotted over to Elijah's side, wagging his tail expectantly. Elijah crouched down, placing a hand on Buddy's head. "What do you think, Bella?" he asked, glancing over at her. "Would you be okay if Buddy stayed with me?" Bella's ears perked slightly, and after a moment she let out a quiet huff before resting her head back on her paws. It wasn't much, but to Elijah it felt like her way of giving consent. Later that day, Elijah made the call. When Karen picked up, her voice was filled with excitement. "Elijah, we're getting ready to come up tomorrow. How are Bella and the puppies?" "They're doing great," Elijah replied. "I've been preparing everything for the trip." He hesitated for a moment, then continued. "There's something I wanted to ask you." "Of course," Karen said. "What is it?" Elijah took a deep breath. "One of the puppies, Buddy, has gotten very attached to me and, well, I've gotten attached to him too. I was wondering if it might be possible for him to stay here with me." There was a brief pause on the line before Karen spoke again, her tone warm and understanding. "Oh, Elijah, of course, we're just so grateful Bella and her puppies are safe and happy. If Buddy has found a place with you, we'd be happy to let him stay." Relief washed over Elijah and a small smile tugged at his lips. "Thank you," he said sincerely. "It means a lot." When the call ended, Elijah looked over at Buddy, who was now happily gnawing on a toy near the fire. "Looks like you're staying, little guy," he said. Buddy perked up at the sound of his voice, bounding over to him with the unbridled enthusiasm that had won Elijah's heart. The next day, as Karen and her family arrived in Snowfield, the reunion was as emotional as Elijah had expected. Bella, now officially reunited with her family, wagged her tail furiously as Karen and her children hugged her. The puppies, too, were greeted with love and excitement, each one a cherished addition to their family. Amid the laughter and tears, Karen knelt down beside Elijah. "Thank you for everything," she said. "Buddy's going to be very lucky with you." Elijah glanced down at the little pup who was now nestled in his arms. "I think I'm the lucky one," he replied. As the Carter family drove away with Bella and the other puppies, Elijah stood on his porch, Buddy at his side. The house was quieter now, but it no longer felt empty. Buddy had a way of filling the space, not just with his playful energy, but with a warmth that Elijah hadn't realized he'd been missing. For Elijah, keeping Buddy wasn't just a decision, it was a reminder that even in the coldest of seasons, new beginnings could bring unexpected joy. The snow that had once buried Snowfield had begun to retreat, replaced by soft patches of green peeking through the frost. The air, though still crisp, carried the promise of spring, and the bright sun above painted the town in a golden glow. Elijah stood on his porch, Buddy sitting by his feet as they awaited the arrival of the Carter family. Elijah's home had been a flurry of activity that morning. He had carefully packed a small bag for Bella's journey, including her favorite blanket and a few toys for the puppies. As he looked out at the road stretching into the distance, he felt a mixture of anticipation and bittersweet emotion. Around midday, the hum of an approaching car broke the quiet. Elijah straightened, his heart quickening as a silver SUV came into view, its tires crunching over the gravel driveway. Buddy barked excitedly, his tail wagging as if sensing the importance of the moment. The car door swung open and Karen Carter stepped out, her face lighting up as she spotted Bella through the living room window. Her husband Tom followed along with their 2 children, a boy and a girl who looked no older than 10. "Bella," Karen called, her voice trembling with emotion. Inside, Bella's ears perked up at the sound of her name. She rose from her spot near the fire, her tail wagging furiously as she bounded toward the door. Elijah opened it, stepping aside as Bella rushed out, her excitement uncontainable. Karen knelt, arms outstretched, as Bella leapt into her embrace. Tears streamed down her cheeks as she hugged the dog tightly. "We missed you so much, girl," she whispered, her voice breaking. The children joined in, wrapping their small arms around Bella, who licked their faces with unrestrained affection. Tom stood nearby, his expression a mix of relief and gratitude as he watched the reunion. "She's back," Tom said softly, looking at Elijah. Thank you for keeping her safe." Elijah nodded, his own emotions threatening to overwhelm him. "She's an incredible dog. I'm glad I could help." As the children's laughter filled the air, Karen turned her attention to the puppies, who had cautiously followed Bella outside. "Oh my goodness," she gasped, her hand flying to her mouth. "Puppies?" Elijah chuckled. "Yes, Bella brought a little surprise along with her." The children squealed with delight, dropping to their knees to scoop up the wriggling puppies. Each tiny ball of fur was met with gentle strokes and joyful exclamations. Blaze, ever the bold one, darted straight into the boy's arms while Misty and Snowy curiously sniffed the girl's outstretched hands. Karen glanced at Elijah, her eyes shimmering with gratitude. "You've given us more than we ever imagined. How can we possibly thank you for this?" "You already have," Elijah replied simply. As the Carter family spent time with Bella and her puppies, Elijah found himself observing the scene with a sense of quiet fulfillment. Bella had clearly missed her family, and the love they shared was undeniable. Karen eventually approached Elijah with Buddy nestled in her arms. The little pup squirmed slightly before wriggling free and darting back to Elijah, his tail wagging furiously. "I see what you mean about him being attached to you," Karen said with a laugh. "He's a special one," Elijah admitted, crouching down to scratch behind Buddy's ears. "I'm going to miss the others, but keeping him feels right." Karen nodded. "He's found his person, hasn't he?" Elijah looked at Buddy, who leaned against him with absolute trust. "I think so," he said softly. As the afternoon wore on, it was time for the Carters to head home. Elijah helped load Bella and the puppies into the SUV, ensuring they were comfortable for the drive. Karen and Tom offered more thanks, their words heartfelt and sincere, before the family finally climbed into the car. The children waved enthusiastically as the vehicle pulled away, Bella's head poking out of the window for one last look. Elijah stood on the porch, watching until the car disappeared from view. The quiet settled over his home once more, but this time it didn't feel empty. Buddy, standing by his side, looked up at him expectantly, his amber eyes full of curiosity. "Well, it's just the two of us now," Elijah said, reaching down to pat Buddy's head. Buddy barked in agreement, bounding inside as Elijah held the door open. In the days and weeks that followed, Elijah adjusted to his new normal. The house was quieter without Bella and the other puppies, but Buddy's vibrant energy filled the space in a way that felt just right. The little pup quickly became Elijah's constant companion, following him into the studio as he worked, curling up beside him during quiet evenings and bounding through the snow during their walks. Elijah returned to his pottery, his hands shaping clay with a renewed sense of purpose. Buddy, always curious, would watch intently from his favorite spot near the window, his head tilted as if trying to understand the process. One afternoon, as Elijah worked on a new piece, his mind wandered back to the past few months. Bella's arrival during the storm, the birth of the puppies, the chaotic yet joyful days that followed. It all felt like a dream. Yet the bond he had formed with Buddy was undeniably real, a reminder of the unexpected gifts life could bring. Buddy, sensing Elijah's stillness, trotted over and nudged his leg with a cold nose. Elijah chuckled, setting the clay aside as he scooped the little dog into his arms. "You've changed everything, you know that?" he said, looking into Buddy's bright eyes. The pup responded with an enthusiastic lick to Elijah's cheek, his tail wagging furiously. As the sun dipped below the horizon, casting the room in a warm glow, Elijah felt a deep sense of peace. The winter had brought challenges, but it had also brought new life, new connections, and a renewed appreciation for the simple joys of companionship. Buddy wasn't just a pet, he was a friend, a reminder of resilience and love in the face of life's storms. And as Elijah sat with Buddy in the quiet of his home, he knew that this chapter of his life was only the beginning of something truly special.